What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. This is episode 2, and today I'm talking with Phil Jones, aka Coach Phil. So I got Phil from Splyce here for the professional Halo team for Splyce, and before I get him in here to speak, I just want to give a quick rundown of his bio. Phil joins the Halo team for Splyce, and he's actually a Halo veteran himself. And I'm just learning that he's coached professional teams since the release of Halo 3, I believe. And I believe he was 15 years old. That's what Splyce's bio says. We'll ask him about that. But he's got a long tenure of experience, 7 years of experience in Halo. He comes with a wealth of knowledge for not only Halo the game, but coaching and keeping a team's composure. And we'll talk a little bit about that as the show goes on. And he's got some accolades himself. His highest achievements so far have been bronze in Halo 5 Guardians that was showcased at the 2016 Winter X Games. And I'll have him correct me if I'm wrong. But Phil, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, man. So I really just want to hear from you, like, what's your narrative? I like to call it. Like, who are you, and what are you doing for Splyce as far as the Halo team goes, and how did you get into the scene?
Okay. Well, I'll start. So my name is Phil. Coach Phil is my handle. Obviously, coach for Splyce. So I started coaching, I guess whenever I was like 14. First event was whenever I was 15. I believe I'm the youngest pro coach ever that I know of, at least. And since Tyler's retired, I am the longest running pro coach on any current pro team as well. First event was Columbus, I think 2009, in Halo 3 with Adrenaline Rush. Which was the team that had previously won the first Combine. So really, right off the start, I didn't really have to go through coaching like lower AM teams or anything. I was able to make friends with the right people, with the right players, and I was able to start on a really good established team. They had just got top 16, which back in the MLG days was a much bigger deal than what it is now. And so I got 21st with them, and then I took a little bit of a break because Halo 3 was kind of dying down, and I had some stuff for school. I was in like junior high at the time, so school was really important. So I took a little bit of a break till Halo Reach. And Halo Reach, I was able to use some of my connections to get on Active Rush, which was a really well-established pro team at the time, kind of like middle of the pack, top 12 frequently, and with Beaver and Frosty, the original Frosty, and Icebane and Ares. And we did well. I got numerous top 12 placings, a couple of top 8 placings with them at the end of Halo Reach. Really enjoyed it. One of my favorite teams ever. Coached them for a little over a year, and still really good friends with a lot of those guys. And then off of that, in Halo 4, I coached some more well-known teams like Believe the Hype. Infamous was in the AGL days. I got second place with Team Infamous. That was my first really, really good placing.
Right.
And that was with Goofy, Nated, Ryan Noob, and Lethal. And that team was really well. We actually got reset in the bracket, so we should have got first, but we kind of choked. And then Halo 4 kind of died. AGL went away, and I took off H2A. Didn't compete in H2A. The game was kind of broken when it came out. I just started college, just kind of want to enjoy myself. I got back into it in Halo 5 before a lot of the major tournaments started. I hit up my old teammate Nated. He was on Allegiance at the time, and I joined up with that team. At the time it was Kratos, Nated, Suspector, and L-Town. And I went to the Winter X Games with them. We got third place bronze, which was my next highest placing. And that was an amazing experience being at the Winter X Games. Really, really cool, everything that we got to do there. Then, unfortunately, I was actually dropped from that team for various reasons. We'll probably go into it later on in the interview. And I got a last-second spot on Winter Fox with Shooter and Ryan Noob, one of my old teammates and one of my future teammates at the time, for the regionals. We didn't qualify for the first Worlds, and then I had actually decided to I was just going to be done. I didn't qualify for Worlds, and it was kind of upsetting seeing a team that I had just been coaching. They were going to Worlds. They got second. They won a ton of money. They did really well, and it just kind of like it was a little defeating. So I was going to be done. And before the new Pro League started, one of my old teammates, Goofy, hit me up and was like, "Hey, I'm on Allegiance with Ryan Noob, Contra, Devin. We're doing really well. We're getting ready to go try to qualify for this Pro League." He and I had a really good relationship when I coached him, and he thought really highly of me. He wanted me to come back. I decided to come back, and then that led into Pro League with HCS. I was with Allegiance for a very long time, different iterations, primarily with Contra and Devin as the core. When that team broke up, Contra and Devin went to go runs with Shooter and Boo Boo Doo Boo. I had previously coached Shooter, and Shooter was actually on Allegiance with us at one point. So I kind of had a relationship with them. Contra and Devin unfortunately went to EG, so I went with Shooter and Boo Boo, and we picked up Falcade, another one of my old teammates, and then eventually Shotzi. That was the first iteration of Splyce. At the time we were Inconceivable, and then recently we dropped Falcade and picked up Renegade, and that has led to today where a couple days ago, last weekend, we got first place in DreamHack Atlanta.
Yeah, now that's awesome, like, history, and what that really illustrates to me is that not only you've been in the game a long time, and it's not just throwing words out there or labels out there like, oh, I've been in esports for so long. You've been in it and doing it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about for a second about that win. We'll talk about it in a second here. But what I really want to get to first is you've had a lot of history in the industry. So tell me a little bit. Obviously, there's been ups and downs. What's been one of the worst moments for you, in just esports in general or your gaming career? Like, what's been the biggest moment for you that's been like a big disappointment or a letdown or a big failure for you that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I would definitely say my biggest letdown was what I'd previously mentioned, getting dropped from Allegiance. A big part was because one of the reasons was they wanted a former pro player that didn't qualify for Worlds as their coach, because that's just something that they were looking for. But I think the bigger reason, the overshadowing reason, was I just wasn't on enough. I wasn't committing the time it took for it, and I think
right.
that I just don't think they liked that very much, which I completely understand.
Yeah, I hear that. So they were looking for somebody that was grinding day in and day out, and you weren't putting in that kind of level of effort at that time. Is that kind of what you're
yeah.
alluding to? Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just getting just getting dropped and then just seeing them go on and do so well. I mean, it was just it wasn't necessarily demoralizing, but it just sucked just because I know that if I would have put more time in at the time, that would have been me along with them, and it would have felt good. And so that was probably my lowest point.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a good teacher for you, and a really defining moment for you. In that, really you seems like you really decided from that point on that like you were going to get it and go all in for it. And it seems like from your track record you have, and that leads me to talk about the DreamHack Atlanta win that you guys had just last Sunday, like 3 days ago. Tell me, obviously it was a really hype moment, but I just want you to touch it for a minute on what it was like that day, like going into Sunday, what it was like. I know the stream went down, like there was chaos because of that. I know Marty was like freaking out on Twitter because the stream was down and there was some people like, periscoping it. But aside from that, like, tell me about like the team, the composure, where you guys had yourself as far as a frame of mind, and like what you guys were thinking going into that Sunday, and tell me a little bit about how that day went for you from a mentality standpoint, and how you think you were able to overcome the odds and take down the big dogs.
Yeah, a lot of it started, I guess, kind of on Friday a little bit, just because Friday was so delayed, and then that went into Saturday, which delayed Saturday. So our matches, I mean, we didn't play until probably 3, I think, our first match, something like that on Saturday. And I mean, that was just against Era, and it was just kind of like a warm-up match for us. And then we played one of the European teams, and that was kind of a warm-up match a little bit. And then, so that was like kind of late. And then we were told that our liquid match that was Saturday was going to be moved to Sunday. So we were like, okay, we're going to play them Sunday. Then it got moved back to Saturday night. So that, I think, kind of had an impact a little bit. Like, it was good to get to play liquid and get that out of the way the night before so that we could focus on Optic on Sunday morning. So that ended up being a nice change that they were able to make. At first, I was a little annoyed because they told us, oh, it's going to be Sunday, then they changed it. But it was good. Yeah. I think it was good that it happened. And then just going into Sunday, I mean, we made sure to try to get as much sleep as we could. Our match was one of the later ones, so we were able to sleep in a little bit and just kind of relax. At tournaments, we don't like stress about like, oh, scrimming other teams or anything. We just like play FFAs and CTF warm-ups and stuff and just chill out and just get our shots ready. And we just kind of go over each of the game types. Like, I make sure that I'm keeping track of these are the game types we're going to play, and we go over each individual game type, what we want to do, what we think the other team's going to do. Just kind of pretty typical stuff. And I mean, the way we looked at it is we're the best team. Like, we knew going into it, we are the best team. A lot of these teams, like, yeah, we just got 4th last tournament, but we kind of saw that as a fluke. We choked. We should have beat Liquid at that tournament, and who knows what would have happened. I mean, Optic lost to Envy, and we play really well against a team like Envy. And so we felt like we should have won the previous tournament. We knew that we were the best, and we knew that, I mean, teams eventually plateau. You look at the old Instinct, you look at the old EG. I mean, Lethal left, and I think a large part of that was because Lethal knew that EG roster was going to plateau. So I think Optic's probably nearing their plateau mark. I mean, they've lost 2 straight tournaments. They used to be far ahead, and now teams have caught up to them. There's 3 or 4 teams that are really vying for first place at these tournaments now. So we knew what we had to do. I mean, none of us had won a major tournament before, but we knew what it took to do so, and we knew that we had the skill.
Now, you guys, is there a certain amount of VOD watching? Like, do you guys scout the opponent? I know in like different games like CS:GO and other titles like that, like watching VODs and scouting teams is really a staple of the prep work. Like, is that something you guys do?
I think every Halo team, including ourselves, probably does some game or watches some gameplay of other teams. It's kind of hard because online, I mean, it's online, so online versus LAN, it's different. And then also teams will practice something in one scrim, and then if it works and if they like it, they won't use it again and they'll save it for tournaments. And so it's really hard to predict what it. Yeah, and like a big thing for scouting is figuring out the other team's opening strat. But a lot of times you're not 100% sure if they're going to use that opening strat, and it's not always good to base your whole strat around a potential thing that they're going to do off the start. Because if they don't do that, and if your start's based off of that, then it may fail. So you just need to keep in mind what they may do, but still focus on what's best suited for your team. And I mean, I think a lot of players like kind of get head cases a little bit from watching our players. I know a lot of people watch Satsi and try to figure out what he does, but I also feel like a lot of people kind of head case Satsi and get a little scared, like going up against him, like he's able to like average them and outshoot them just because they kind of overthink it a little too much.
Yeah, it's typical in sports, right? Like, we get this analysis paralysis where you watch so much game footage and you try and get into the other person's head or the other team's gameplay so much that you kind of lose sight of what you're focused on, and I see that as being a big factor. Now, would you say that, that this DreamHack Atlanta win, would you say that's your biggest accomplishment so far personally as a coach for that team? Would it be that X Games bronze? Like, tell me, what's your biggest accomplishment so far in esports?
I mean, the X Games may be the coolest just because it was the X Games, and like I was on ESPN, and my family and my friends, like I remember getting a text from some of my friends that were just watching the X Games, and they saw like me on ESPN, like in the medal ceremony. So like that was really, really cool and very different. But I do this for winning. I mean, I'm a very competitive person. In PE class, I always wanted to win, even though it was just gym class. Like in sports, whenever I was younger, whenever I played sports, like in high school, junior high. Exactly. Like I just am a very, very competitive person, and so winning is most important to me. So winning is definitely the highest achievement. that I've had, and it's the one that means the most to me, especially with this team. I love this team, and so being able to do it with these guys and at this time, I mean, it was definitely the highest point for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I can't even imagine. Like, I'm a huge X Games fan. Like, I was a snowboarder growing up, skateboarder, like all that stuff. So I would idolize those people being on the X Games and be like, well, that's awesome. And so that's a huge accomplishment, and that's something that I respect, and I think it's just super awesome. A quick story, actually. I used to play Halo when Halo Original came out, right? Like, back in the day. I was in high school. Me and my buddies would always LAN it. Every weekend, we'd go to my friend's house. His parents would literally put in earplugs overnight so they didn't hear us, like, hooting and hollering. We would have 8-on-8 capture the flag battles, right? And this one time, we were playing 8-on-8 on Sidewinder. I don't know if you've played, you remember. Original Halo, Sidewinder. The pistols were awesome. Well, we didn't know at the time that you could jump and snipe accurately. So we're going back and forth. I was a huge sniper, and a buddy of mine on the other team was a really good sniper too. And we're going back and forth, back and forth. We were literally on one edge of the map behind the big rock on the hill, and then the other end of the map. And I jumped up, I scoped, sniped him, and everyone just stopped. Everyone threw their controllers down. They yelled, and we were like, "Oh, oh!" And we just yelled, and it was just awesome. And that's one of the fond memories I have of Halo. And another one, like, somebody arm checked or body slammed the hood of somebody else's car because they got so competitive they lost. But we would get so competitive too. Like, I definitely understand that competitive nature. So what would be your advice for someone who is aspiring to be where you are now, or where your team or your guys are now in the industry, like with esports? How does someone get to the point where they're able to be either scouted for a pro team or join a pro team or start a pro team? Like, how do you get to that level? Like, what's required for that?
I'll focus mainly on what would be required as far as, like, be like a coach, like kind of being where I am. And a lot of it, in my opinion, is kind of loyalty as far as coaches go. Like, team changes happen a lot in Halo, especially at the professional level. I mean, I'm expecting a big roster mania to come shortly after this tournament in the coming days, just because that's what happens after big tournaments, in between seasons. Teams make pretty big changes to try and keep up with the person that just won previously. And so it's hard to be loyal all the time, but loyalty is really big with coaches, because you got to think there's 64 pro players on a team, but there's only 8 coaches. So the spots are few and far in between. And so players have a little bit more room to jump around and join other teams and try other things. Coaches, not so much, because a lot of times a team will keep their coach for a while because either they're really good friends or he's a really good coach, or for whatever reason he's on that team. And so it's hard to get a team to drop their coach for you. So the best thing you can do is follow a player that you had previously coached to a new team that doesn't have one, or join a team that's an upcoming team that you think could be a pro team, and try and work with them. And then whenever they get the pro status, they'll keep you because you were there for the long haul with them. And so a lot of it's just loyalty and keeping up with your connections. Like, whenever I retired and came back, it was because one of my old teammates, Goofy, thought really highly of me, needed a coach, and so he reached out to me. Whenever I came back after H2A, I hit up Nated. He was an old teammate of mine, like, really enjoyed me as a coach, and so he wanted me to join his team whenever I asked. On Splyce, I'd coached Shooter and Falcated, and I had a history of doing well with teams, and people liked me, and they enjoyed having me, so I was able to join that team. And that's just a lot of my career is just like, I mean, I've been with a lot of the same people for a long time. I was with Active Rush for over a year, and we were only placing top 12, top 8. And I knew that I had a couple offers to get on some better teams at the time back in Halo 3. I could have got top 6 a couple times with a couple different teams. But if I would have joined those teams, I would have got top 6, top 5, like, for one event. And then all those teams that I turned down or didn't pursue as much as I could have, they ended up breaking up, and I would have lost a spot. And then I would have been scrambling to find a different pro team. But staying with Active Rush, I was able to solidify my spot and be safe for the entire duration. So that meant more to me. Job security for a coach is a little bit more important, just like I said, because there's less spots, and there's a lot of people that want those spots. So just figuring out who you think is the best and building connections and building friendships and just using your previous connections, that's the biggest thing for a coach for sure. And then also, you got to be a little bit more of a manager as well. You got to be the one that's going to take point with the organization, with the sponsorships, with just a lot of that stuff like that the players just don't want to deal with, like dealing with ESL and 343 and the emails and the responses and the travel and all that. You got to keep up on that because that also takes pressure off of the players from having to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is it's relationships, right? Like it's building on relationship, it's networking with people, interacting with people, and not just sitting in your own silo playing online, or going to events and just having a good time. It's if you want to make it big, like you have to meet people, a lot of people, and be friendly with people who are doing well, and recognize the people that are doing well and have that potential. You always meet somebody that just has it. You feel like they just have that kind of thing. Those are the type of people that you probably want to gravitate towards and kind of latch onto and work with. What gets you really excited about waking up every day? Like what's one or two things that just super excites you every day and gets you up out of bed and keeps you going?
I'm just like a really like upbeat, happy kind of guy. I never like wake up and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. I'm a student. I'm getting ready to go to law school here in another year, so I'm finishing up college. I intern at a law firm that does a lot of great work. So, and then obviously my coaching at night and being with the team I'm on. So just the potential that's out there every day to do something new and great, I think is always out there for everybody. And the more you wake up with a negative mindset, the more you wake up and you don't want to do something, that just stops you from actually doing something with your life. I mean, you could lay in bed all day and be like, oh, I don't really want to get up. Or you can actually get up and do something with your life and make the most of it, and try to make someone else's life better. I mean, if they say if you're able to make someone laugh or smile each day, then you did something right that day. And so I just kind of try to take that to heart. And then, I mean, as far as gaming goes, just especially at tournaments, waking up and knowing that you're going to win and just having that competitive spirit is big. I mean, we didn't wake up on Sunday being like, fuck, we got to play Optic. Optic's one of the best teams. We woke up like, let's go. Let's go beat Optic. Let's go. And so it's definitely important.
That positivity is like really infectious too. When you have it as a coach or a leader, people look up to you, whether they really say it or not, or they really show it or not. People look up to you. And having that positivity, that just cutthroat positivity and no negativity, and just completely eliminating any negativity as soon as it comes up, I think is super key for being competitive and staying competitive and winning. And that's in life in general. Like whether you're applying for a job, or you're applying for a promotion, there's somebody else you're competing with for that promotion in your job, or whatever it is. Like you have to have positivity. If you let any negativity in, you're just going to psych yourself out. And I think that's really great advice. I think that's awesome advice. Mm-hmm. The last part of the podcast, I like to do what's called a 5-question combo breaker. This is kind of like a lightning round, right? So it's like quick answers, and it's 5 questions. Just give me like what comes to top of mind for you when I ask you the question. So, number 1 is, what's the best advice someone has ever given you?
I always go to the YouTube video where the guy's like, if you want it as bad as you want to breathe, or like basically you got to want something as bad as you want to breathe, otherwise you're not going to be successful. So if you want something that bad, then you're gonna achieve it. That's probably my best motivational advice I've seen or received.
Right. Nice. What's been the biggest factor for your own personal success?
Just like I said, the networking and just being an approachable person, building the relationships, and just trying my hardest day in and day out.
Nice. What do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful, whether it's the esports industry as a whole, or if you want to just reference Halo? But what does that industry or that niche or that title need to continue to grow and be successful and gain followers and get mainstream media attention?
Just continuously working on getting bigger and better sponsors into the scene, to get a bigger audience out there through them. I think there needs to be work with contracts and players and player unions potentially, and just different aspects of protecting players a little bit more, but also protecting orgs to where if a player doesn't like their contract that they sign, they can't just go out there and be like, hey, this org's holding me to my contract, and then getting everybody mad at the organization. That happens a lot in Halo. But the player is the one that agreed to in the first place. They need to be held accountable. They should be reading what they're agreeing to, even if they are just 16-year-old. At the very least, have someone read it for you. So I guess just more accountability in esports on both sides, and just getting it out there to bigger audience through just different sponsors and other forms of media.
Nice. If you weren't in esports, if you weren't a Halo coach, what would you be doing?
Well, right now I'm a full-time student, getting ready for law school, and so that's my primary goal right now. I mean, I'll have to eventually retire here somewhat soon probably and focus on law school. But yeah, just becoming an attorney, and honestly, I'd like to hopefully work as an attorney in the esports field and build on my connections and work something and continue into this industry, because I think it's only going to be bigger and better, and by the time I actually am ready to practice, it'll be way bigger than what it is now.
Nice. Now, the last question I have is, what's the best play in esports you've ever seen? Any game, whatever it is, doesn't matter. What's the best play?
There's just too many to even think about. I'll try and focus on all I'll say for as picking one in particular. If you go back and watch this past weekend and just watch our matches, our player shooter had some of the most amazing sticky grenades and sticks on players throughout the entire event and throughout the entire weekend. Every single matchup, he had at least one or two clutch stickies and multiple in some matches. So just look out for those. They may not have been on stream, but if you see in the kill feed, like, shooter stuck a guy, it was probably a really big play, and a lot of the times, like, snipes are really impressive, but those really stuck out to me because some of those were really game-changing. So shooter sticks were probably the MVP of the weekend for me.
Yeah, it's not only is it satisfying when you get a sticky, but when you get so many, it's like, who are you, and are you human? It's like,
exactly.
It's just insane. It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, that's it for the 5-question combo breaker. I just want to personally thank you again, Phil, Coach, for coming on the show. You are going to be one of the first interviews on the Esports Narrative, and I can't thank you enough for doing this. I know that you're, got your practice schedule and everything like that, and life going on, so I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me, and it means a lot that this is going to be one of the first episodes, and I can't wait to have you on again sometime, maybe as a lawyer or as an attorney doing esports attorney work, or maybe as a coach, who knows. And hopefully I can get some of your guys on and get some other people in the Splyce organization to kind of tell their story a little bit. And I just want to thank you, and if you want, let people know where they can connect with you or engage with you on Twitter, stuff like that. Let people know.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please give me a follow. I love getting as many followers as I can. It's at Coach Phil _. So at Coach Phil, all one word, _ is my Twitter. And then I'd also just like to give a big thanks to Splyce for everything they've done for us, for our managers, for our amazing owner, Marty, that really cares about the esports industry, and just all of our amazing sponsors, Turtle Beach, Scuff, Mountain Dew, Corsair, and all the other amazing sponsors that we have within the organization, and just 343 and ESL and everything in the HCS that allows us to do what we do day in and day out and puts all these big tournaments on for us. So just thanks to all of them, and like I said, thanks for having me on. I always enjoy it, and hopefully the podcast gets bigger and bigger, and I'll be able to see it grow.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks for coming on the show, and we will talk to you again next time. Thank you, listeners. I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating on iTunes. I would love a 5-star, but if you think I deserve a 1, let me have it and tell me why.